How's everyone doing today? Welcome back to another episode of the Banker Next Door. I am your host, Dr. Joe Berquist. Today, I wanted to talk to everybody about what can community banks do about dealing with cross-border payments. So I came across a very interesting article in Independent Banker magazine. I wanted to go through this with everyone. So this is titled, What Should Community Banks Know About Cross-Border Payments? As cross-border payments reforms take shape, community banks must navigate promising opportunities and significant adjustments in this evolving space. So let's get into this. So in November 2020, the G20, a forum of the world's largest economies, endorsed a roadmap designed to tackle the challenges of cross-border payments. Specifically, this roadmap addresses high costs, slow speeds, insufficient access, and transparency in three priority areas: payment system interoperability and extension, legal, regulatory, and supervisory frameworks, and cross-border data exchange and message standards. A series of quantitative targets helps assess progress for these areas, a majority of which have a deadline of 2027. So a voice for community banks. So the Financial Stability Board, FSB, an international body, I lost me an international body. No, just kidding. I kid. That coordinates the work for national financial authorities and international standard-setting bodies, brings together cross-border payments experts from around the world to provide feedback on ways to harmonize global legal, regulatory, and supervisory payments frameworks in support of the roadmap. So earlier this year, Brian Lavadeur, ICBA's Senior Vice President of Digital Assets and Innovation Policy, was appointed to the FSB's Task Force on Legal, Regulatory, and Supervisory Matters, guaranteeing U.S. community banks' input as cross-border payments are debated on a global stage. We are the only voice for community banks in that forum, says Lavadeur, making any sort of adjustments or recommendations to legal, regulatory, supervisory frameworks. The FSB needs to consider the impact on community banks and in turn their customers who are interacting with businesses around the world. Now, there's a little sidebar here, which basically says ICBA's cross-border payment advocacy. So ICBA has established a cross-border payments working group to help identify pain points that community banks and their customers face with cross-border payments. Specifically, the working group has three main goals. Number one, identify specific pain points and concerns, such as BSA, AML, technical aspects, etc. Number two, develop ideas to improve the cross-border payment experience for community banks and their customers. And number three, support ICBA advocacy on issues related to cross-border payments. We've brought this group together to learn about community banks' cross-border pain points because we can't really accept something as a solution if we don't know what we're trying to solve for, says Brian Lavadeur, ICBA's Senior Vice President of Digital Assets and Innovation Policy. So now back to the article. So we get into the next section here, which is called the digital balance in cross-border payments. So as the FSB considers ways to remove friction from the cross-border payments distributed ledger technology, also known as DLT, has emerged as one potential solution. In fact, FSB's October 2024 report, The Financial Stability Implications of Tokenization, indicated that many financial services organizations are exploring DLT-based tokenization for global payments. If you want more information on that, I will connect you to, I'm trying to think, I did cover that in that report on the financial stability implications of tokenization, if I can get that out. I did cover that in the crypto series. I'm trying to think which episode, but I will be sure on the end card at the end of this episode, you guys will see a link to the crypto series. So if you guys want to go the playlist, so if you guys want to go check that out, you can check it out and get more information on that in particular report. So a June 2024 report from the U.S. Faster Payments Council reiterated that sentiment, noting DLT could be a game changer, transforming the way currency conversion is supported today and thereby significantly improving the timing in which transactions are completed. Think about having a FedNow payment settle on the distributed ledger or transferring that fiat to a stablecoin and then having that stablecoin settle in real time, says Angela Murphy, Vice President of Marketing and Solutions for technology solution provider Pidgin. That's the big North Star idea of where I think this could go, but it's going to take a while for people to get there. It will take time, in part because DLT doesn't come without risks. As the basis for cryptocurrency, it brings with it security concerns, particularly as cryptocurrency fraud rises exponentially. The FBI's latest Internet Crime Complaint Center report reveals cryptocurrency fraud losses of 9.3 billion in 2024, accounting for more than half of all reported fraud losses and making global collaboration all the more vital. It's not enough for any one country to act alone, says Labrador. As long as you have some jurisdictions with weak regulatory frameworks or corruption or other issues, that's where the bad actors are going to go. It really does speak to a need for jurisdictions to work together to address common concerns. Then the final section here is called Banking Locally, Transacting Globally. Today, most of the cross-border payments that community banks make take the form of wire transfers, but consumers are increasingly looking for faster transactions, lower fees, and an easier experience. So against this backdrop of the G20 roadmap and cross-border payments evolution, what can community banks do now to improve international payments? I've been encouraging community institutions to run an analysis of their payments behavior, says Murphy. How many international wires are you processing? What are their personas or verticals that could most directly benefit from reducing the cost and increasing the timeliness of international payments? Once you have that information, you can look at what a strategy could be to engage in cross-border. Experts also point to the importance of sharing experiences to influence global actions. I think the best way for community banks to try to shape that undetermined future is to speak up and have a voice, says Lavender. They need to be aware of all the different possibilities and try to figure out how they could impact their businesses and what they can do to shape the most positive outcome. And then there's one other sidebar here. It just says quick stat, 321 billion, the expected value of the cross-border payments market by 2030. So definitely a lot there to grasp. Now, I want to say because I want to note on a couple things here. Like number one, community banks, a lot of time, depending on the size of the bank, like they said, most of this is now currently being done through wire transfers. Well, a lot of community banks out there, they don't necessarily have the volume, especially of international wire transfers. So they have to outsource their wire department to other type of banking entities, like correspondent banks, like AC. Think of somebody like ACBB. And those banks basically act as the outsourced wire department. Now, again, they're still able to move very quickly, and they're able to do it in a fashion where 99% of customers have no idea. You come in at 10 o'clock to send a wire, the bank sends it, they send the order through to ACBB. So I'm just using an example here. So they send it to ACBB, and by 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, the wire has entered the correspondent bank. So, and now that's a domestic wire. International wire could take a little bit longer, maybe takes a day or maybe a few more hours, whatever, to get through, but it still gets through very quickly. But my point being is that a lot of this business is based on volume. A lot of it's not just, you might have a couple international customers, but you still need X amount of volume to kind of make it worthwhile to have your own in-house wire department. Like, example, like, Wells Fargo, US Bank, Citibank, Bank of America, they all obviously have their own internal wire departments where they're wiring money all around the world. But for community banks in particular, so now you get into kind of like this stablecoin conversation, right? Well, one of the interesting things there is that the FedNow system is basically built on a blockchain, like a DLT rail system. That's basically what it's been built on. Now, I do have worries, though. I do have some concerns with this, obviously, around central bank digital currency. I am wholeheartedly against the central bank digital currency. Do not want it. Yet I think there are a lot of forces, particularly internationally, the European stage over in Switzerland. They very much want a central bank digital currency. They're in the process of, trying to put through a digital ID on all the people in Europe right now as we speak. It was already announced in Britain. It's been voted for in Switzerland. I think they're going to try to implement it in Canada. I think it's going to be, and they're what they're going to do is they're going to try to put this through around the world And then they're going to try to put pressure on the United States to implement it by basically saying like, yeah, none of your citizens will be allowed to travel to Europe or to do business here or to do anything unless they also have a digital ID. And of course, following very quickly on the heels of the digital ID will no doubt be the central bank digital currency. So I have a lot of concerns about this. And again, obviously, I see a lot of potential for like stablecoin, potentially for cryptocurrencies down the world, depending on what happens. But there is a lot of fraud. There is a lot of illicit financial activity that goes on with these things. It's very difficult. But again, just, a lot of things to consider here. So I think the important thing is, if you're a community bank and you're looking at or considering these cross-border payments, again, I think what they state at the end of the article there, think about, who's your target market? What kind of customers are you bringing in the door? How much volume do you perceive are you going to have? Does it make sense to get involved with like FedNow? Does it make sense to, start looking at stablecoin and other digital assets and getting into that? These are a lot of very important questions to ask, a lot of very important things to consider. Because obviously a lot of this is going to unfold in the next 5 to 10 years, and we'll see what happens. But anyway, okay. So I hope you found this episode interesting, and I thank you for watching. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. That always helps the channel. Remember, we are on YouTube, Rumble, and all major podcast platforms. Please be sure to leave your comments down below, as I always love getting back to everybody. And as always, make sure to check out some of the other content on the channel. I thank you so much for listening. Have a great day out there, and I'll see you again real soon.